Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's online briefing for our expression of interest on the role of AI in translating emergency warnings for CALD communities. My name is Mary Kadedu, and I am the Node Research Manager for Victoria and Tasmania at Natural Hazards Research Australia. Thank you all for joining us. By the end of this briefing session, you hopefully have a good understanding of what we have in mind for this project and also on the EOI process itself. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting across a range of different Aboriginal lands today. I'm joining you from Boonwurrung country, and I would like to pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to recognize that these lands and waters have always been places for teaching, research, and learning. All right, today's sessions is designed to give you a clear understanding of the project background and objectives, walk you through the EOI process and expectations, and provide a space for you to ask questions, whether they are administrative question, governance, or technical. And ultimately, is really to support you in preparing a strong and competitive submission. We will also transcribe all questions from today and publish them on the project page under the FAQ. And Q&A time will be at the end of the presentation, but feel free to pop your questions in the chat at any time, or at the end, just feel free to raise your hand. I would also encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat. Take this as a great opportunity to connect with other researchers, and you might be even able to consider putting a collaborative submission if you like to do so. So I introduced myself at the start, but for those who jumped on just now, I am the Node Research Manager of Victoria and Tasmania for Natural Hazard Research Australia, and I'm based in Melbourne. Behind the scene today in Melbourne as well, we have Vanna Demetriou, our Senior Research Services Officer, who will be helping with Zoom and transcription. And we also have Brenda McAtee, the Node Research Manager for Western Australia and South Australia, supporting the Q&A time. And of course, we have our agency and users that played a key role in the development of this project, Jane Childs. Jane is the Principal Service Designer within the Hazards Program at New South Wales Department of Customer Service. So with this great team here today, please take this opportunity to get what you need from us to support you with your application. All right, so a little bit about Natural Research Australia. We are a not-for-profit research centre. So the former Bushfire CRC and the Bushfire Natural Hazard CRC, we've been providing over 20 years of research into natural hazards in the Australian context. This centre commenced in 2021 with a new funding agreement from the Commonwealth Government that's been augmented with contributions from formal centre participant agencies. And that enables flexible new research models focused on delivering end users driven research. We work with them to understand the challenges they face and knowledge gaps they might experience in the natural hazard space. We run 2 investment rounds each year, where our participant agencies submit concepts aligned to key focus areas within our biennial research plan. And that's where this research project has come. So through our core research programs, and was submitted by the New South Wales Department of Customer Service. Across Australia, emergency warnings are delivered through several channels, including a wide range of apps and platforms. Think of Hazards Near Me for New South Wales, Vic Emergency for Vic, and Emergency WA for Western Australia, among others. So these web and mobile apps help individuals make informed decisions to protect themselves, their family, friends, properties, and livestock. However, as we know, emergency often come at a very great speed. So to ensure safety, messages must be delivered very quickly and be understood also by culturally and linguistically diverse communities. So this project aims to use artificial intelligence to quickly translate emergency warnings into 7 key community languages, enabling emergency management agencies to better reach CALD communities. AI-based translation tools offer opportunities, but before agencies adopt AI translation at scales, we need solid evidence-based research on performance, limits, and best practice use. So I'll now hand over Jane to outline the need identified, the challenges faced, and ultimately the description of the project. Thank you, Jane.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your interest in this project. As Mary said, I'm a service designer on the Hazards project in New South Wales. And as part of that work, we've built a publishing platform for ESOs to create and publish emergency warnings. So at the moment, New South Wales SES is using it to issue all of the warnings that they create. And they're very interested in this project because all of the state ESOs have legislative responsibility to warn communities in an effective and timely manner. So I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of a background to emergency warnings and the context in which they're delivered and how they're used by the public. So we know that when warnings are not translated, the likelihood of misunderstanding those messages is higher for cold communities, travellers, or new arrivals who may still be getting familiar with the geography of their environments. And they also lack that generational knowledge of fire and flood behaviour. So these groups often rely on support from within their community or families to relay that important information. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see there an example of where a group of fruit and vegetable growers in WA took part in an emergency community briefing, which was translated into Vietnamese for them. Now, that's clearly not a scalable solution. And scalability is really critical because during significant natural hazard events, the number of warnings issued can be, really high. So probably the most recent example is Tropical Cyclone Alfred, where there was a really high volume of severe weather warnings, coastal erosion, flood warnings across New South Wales and Queensland. And it would have been impossible for humans to translate that volume of warnings as quickly as needed. But AI offers that possibility of translating them in near real time. So there's obviously a huge number of benefits that could result from this. Obviously, the main one is that you'd probably see a reduction in the risk of loss of life and property damage. But another important benefit is that easier access to translated warning information means that over time, the behaviour of at-risk called communities might change. They're more informed on how to prepare for natural disasters and can more clearly understand the value of risk mitigation activities within their community. And they're also more empowered to make better decisions in responding to a hazard. To that, I'd add that if communities are better prepared and informed, then there's less of a burden on the emergency service organisations. So they're probably better able to focus on operational activities. And I think that trust in ESOs is likely to grow through the provision of translated warnings because it demonstrates a real commitment to fostering sort of positive relationships with those diverse communities. So that's some of the value that AI might be able to provide. But of course, there's limitations and risks to understand. And I'll talk about the next 2 points together as they're so interrelated. So in terms of limitations and challenges, by their nature, emergency warnings are filled with place names, street names, river names that AI will likely struggle with. So are there ways that can be mitigated? Are there different ways that that information might be treated in translation? So there's lots to think about in terms of some of those, quite specific limitations. And another aspect of warnings that is important to note is that with a goal of providing more consistent messaging, ESOs have heavily templated warnings for the majority. So we would expect that there are large chunks of information that could be pre-translated by humans. This kind of highlights the challenge, though, as the sections of the warnings that are not templated, so the key location-based information for that warning, can't be templated since it's going to describe the impacts and consequences for that community. So that's some of the challenges that I think would be really good to explore. And then finally, for the last 2 points, this is really about the called communities and how the use of AI will impact them. So we want to learn how cold communities will respond to those AI generated translations. Are there specific elements in the translations that, if not correct, might erode their trust in the overall message? Are minor grammatical mistakes okay, for example? One pilot that was run out of Victoria found that by identifying the translations as AI generated, readers were more willing to accept less than perfect translations. So what we're kind of keen to understand is there a tipping point at which comprehension and trust of the warning is impacted? What is that? And what can we do to make sure that we land on the right side of that tipping point? So I guess that's probably all I wanted to say. Just a bit of a background to, the importance of getting these warnings translated, and just a very quick overview of some of the challenges.
Thanks, Jane. So this project, it really is designed to give practical, usable outputs. And the emphasis is really that we get out of this project things that we can use towards using AI to quickly translate emergency warnings. So the goal is that these findings can feed directly into practical real world application. So when it comes to expectations of around the project, we have some expected outputs and some additional components. So in terms of expected outputs, there will be a requirement for a literature review of AI-assisted translation in emergency communications and or related fields. Demographics feedback data on AI translating warnings. Performance outcomes comparison report of the AI supplier tested, and then best practices and implementation consideration for using AI in delivering translated emergency warnings. There also will be, as an expected output, there will be principles and guidelines. So that's where really the practical aspects come through for preparing warnings translation and for AI translations for AI translation. And then a tiered model for human intervention across languages and a final report. So I'm going to go through during this briefing, I will touch on these different aspects. But from a center perspective, along with these research outputs, I guess there's some core project management component. One of these, I think possibly the very first step would be a co-designed project plan with end user. So the successful research team will develop a project plan with the end user and a plain language statement, and that project plan forms a schedule to the contract. There will also be a requirement for quarterly progress reports, and that will be handled through our internal system. Peer review publications and a project evaluation report. So this one is a report that will be completed by the research team or the lead researcher, the lead end user, and the center representative, so likely the node research manager. We also welcome any innovative outputs that your team could deliver and that will help address the outcome. Now, here at Natural Hazard Research Australia, we are very proud of our strong comms team that works closely with all our projects to make sure that we are basically doing good work and it's getting communicated out there and in the right way. So whether through presentations, posters, webinars, everything it's supported by our NIH communications team. Now, a critical element of the EOI submission and more generally the NHRA work is collaboration. So given the translation and research utilization focus on all our work at the center, it's crucial that research teams use a collaborative approach and engage supporting agencies in the research to ensure that all outputs are actually useful, as I said before, useful and usable. So this is when we talk about outcomes, no longer outputs. So therefore, we will need you to outline how you will do this with your submission. So pay particular attention to having a collaborative approach as you put together your submission. And collaborative experience is also assessed separately from the planned project collaboration. So I'll go through how we assess the EOIs. But basically, when we talk about industry engagement as criterion, we mean that you specify your track record working with agencies as stakeholder, not just what you plan to do with this project. All right, so the budget for this project is up to a maximum of $300,000, and the duration estimated will be between 12 to 18 months. Please use the budget spreadsheet template and describe the elements of the budgets well through that spreadsheet. So that's really important for our review. So details is key here. We would like to see detailed explanation of your costing as clear as possible. Let's go a little bit into governance and reporting. So I just want to give you a look here at what the project will require once a successful research team has been engaged. So we contract with one lead entity, either university or consultancy, but that lead entity obviously can organize its own subcontractors as needed, but the contract is with one party. So contractor is with NHRA. Soon after the contract, we will establish a project level governance called PMC, Project Management Committee. So the committee will comprise the lead researcher, lead end user, and the center representative. This committee ensures that all the milestones are met. It provides sector connections and support the project regularly and on a quarterly cycle. In terms of reporting, the reporting requirements include the project plan, the milestones reports, the quarterly reports, and these are the ones linked to payment points within the contract, and a final evaluation report, as noted earlier, and stakeholders presentation. So how does the EOI process look like? So first of all, everything related to this project, project documents, FAQ, and submission templates are available on our website. All the inquiries that beyond this online briefing must be sent through research@naturalhazards.com.au so that we can publish questions and responses in a transparent way. So this is obviously our procurement process. So we require to have that you have all the same information as you are developing submissions. In terms of preparing your submission, so that there's two key documents, and the submission must include these two key documents. There's the EOI submission form and the budget spreadsheet. So in the EOI submission form, you will find references to the budget, but there's in fact an budget spreadsheet where you can actually detail all of your costs. Guidelines are again in the website. I might actually ask Vanna if she wouldn't mind putting some links in the chat for you associated with the project. This slide might look quite a lot, but this basically summarizes everything that we've gone through so far. So there's key aspects, requirements, outputs, outcomes, and your submission will cover these points. Everything is included in the submission form, so you don't really have to note them down right now. But I'm just giving you a bit of a feeling of what's involved in pulling the submission together. The submission will have a statement of capability. This includes the proposed contribution of each research team member to the project, a statement about the diversity of the project team, a statement about the project's inclusion and respect of First Nations peoples. It will include also an outline describing how the project team intends to approach the project, including strategy for effective collaboration and an indicative methodology. You will find in the form also an indicative schedule of work and interim milestones or project outputs. As I said, that section regarding the budget, but please use also the detailed budget template. In the form, you will also find a clear statement describing the outcomes that will be delivered for the project and how they will be used by stakeholders. And a clear statement describing the outputs that will be that the proposed approach to this project will deliver, and obviously how the findings could translate into practice. And finally, a statement demonstrating the project team's relevant industry and stakeholders engagement. Now, this is all the key aspect of the form, and I think it would be very useful to cover also how we assess all these points here. So we do have an assessment process, and we each of the elements of the submission form will be assessed against 5 criteria. So there would be the research capability. So this is where we assess the skills, experience, and team composition to solve the project and deliver the outputs we are looking at. When it comes to the approach, we assess methodology, feasibility, clarity, and please make sure that you really specify how do you propose to do it so that it's clearly supported by a strong methodology. Output and outcomes is another criteria. So this is really important. What we assess here, it's the clarity on deliverables and how they solve the real world problem. What do they mean? Why are they significant? And how will they help us solve the problem? Industry engagement is what I mentioned earlier. So here you should report your strong, and that's what we're going to assess. It's your strong track record working with agencies. A statement that demonstrates the project team's relevant previous stakeholders engagement. And we also assess what sectors you work with, how you work with the sector in the past, and what was achieved through that collaborative approach. So all that track record, all that experience comes into this assessment criteria. And also the ability to support Australia emergency management and, at a broader level as well. So we're looking at nation, state, territory level. And finally, we assess the value for money. So that doesn't mean lower cost. It's the actual money that the value that you are proposing with the budget that's coming through. In-kind contributions are welcome, but please be realistic and clearly describe what that means in relation to your proposal. So make sure that your submission speaks clearly to these criteria, because that are going to be obviously the focus of the EOI assessment. Some key dates. We're here today at the online project briefing. Next date for you to really keep in mind is the closing date. So the EOI closes on the 19th of December. And then after that, we'll then start our assessment process. Now, accounting for Christmas slowdown, the OI award, probably we're looking at early February next year. And I think that's pretty much it from our perspective. So we covered quite a bit. And I think really now it's time for you to send through your questions that might either come from the research side, from our end user and side, if you wanted to jump in and have a bit of more discussion. I'm gonna go and check the chat if there's already something in there. But again, you can raise your hand. So there is a question that I see. Oh, thanks, Vanna, for sending sharing the links. Can you provide links to a report on Victorian pilot you mentioned and any other references cited today?
Yes, I will speak to Emergency Vic and see, yeah, if they're happy to share that. That was their report. So yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Do we have any question coming through? This is a great opportunity. We have Jane here. It's if you want to ask questions to Jane, question to me regarding the process, that's really a great opportunity. Again, if you want to share your and introduce yourself through the chat and share your interest with other researchers, feel free to do so.
I think you mentioned that you're interested in specific AI models, large language models. Is that right? Is that something that you would be wanting to see as a comparison of those specific models in the evaluation?
Jane, I think this is a question for you.
Yes, I think it's kind of an interesting question because some of the languages we know don't have, you know, large language models that exist. So I'm thinking, so in the original proposal, we were looking potentially just at a set of languages that are most used in New South Wales. But we know in places like WA, where there are lots of Indigenous communities that need access to warnings, those large language models don't exist. So I think it would be certainly useful, yeah, to do some exploration of what already exists and whether for those ones where they're well established um, and solid, yeah, what impact that might have because you know in Australia, Victoria, the same as well. Lots of the sort of sub-Saharan African languages again don't have those large language models, but there are significant communities of those speakers in those places. So yeah, it's kind of understanding, I would think, what's the impact where those large language models exist and where they don't, is there a way around that and yeah, what that might look like.
Right,
Does that
fantastic.
answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Judith, for the question. I see a few questions. We are also responding to these questions in the chat as we go so that everybody has visibility. Yes, the slides will be, it's a recording, so will be uploaded. How long is for the proposed project, Lay ask. So I believe that's regarding the time frame. So this project is expected to be completed within 12, 18 months. The next question. Oh, yes, again, thanks for jumping on this. I'm just gonna read this aloud so that everybody has also an understanding of what that means in terms of funds restrictions. So there's a question regarding whether there's any restrictions on what the fund can be used for. For example, if a research assistant can be employed. So yes, these salaries can be included within the project budget, but only when the direct project costs and their salary is not already covered elsewhere. So if we need the full appointment be on this project rather than spread across existing responsibility for the research assistant. There is on the web project page, you will find a little bit more information around the FTE contribution as well. So please jump on the page and have a look, and feel free to reach out if you have further questions around these, or specific examples that we are not covering today. How many languages we need to AI translate? Oh, sorry, it's popping up as I see questions coming through. Do we have to be a native speaker of that language?
So I'd say no, but you'll need assistance at some point to be able to kind of evaluate the quality of the translation. So I think that's kind of going to be a key point. A lot of and even looking at the different translation tools out there, there's differences in the way they translate. So we're looking at some comparison of the different tools that can be used. So yeah, I think you would need access to speakers of some of those languages, certainly, because otherwise there will be no way to kind of evaluate the quality of the translations that are coming through.
Thank you, Josie. Another question coming up a couple of times, so thanks for popping that again. Do you prefer focusing on open source models?
I hadn't really thought of that. I guess, given a lot of these, we'd be talking about, government organizations using this. I think that's probably a good starting point. I wouldn't necessarily restrict it only to open source models.
Do you expect any industry contribution to the project? So I was thinking maybe, Brendan, if you're online, if you could cover a little bit on industry contribution from your experience.
Certainly, industry contributions are welcome. We often work with research consultants as well. So I think the best way to describe what that contribution might be is through the budget template that we've discussed, and you'll find on the website for this expression of interest. So there can be a number of things. It can be in kind. It can be looking for as part of the budget for those services. Just depends on what you want to do. So there's nothing, certainly nothing excluding industry from being involved in these projects. The one area that we do look at closely, I guess, is if those industry or agencies are part of Natural Hazards Research Australia's participant base, then we have to just ask a few questions about that. But there's certainly no reason that industry cannot be involved in projects.
Thank you, Brendan. There's a question, sorry, with I think a couple of points here. So the question asks if the research can be focused on specific geographic areas, or does it have to be one on a large or national geographic scale, especially on the point of demographic data. So I think there's a little bit of a component from Jane when you were also maybe behind also the rationale for the 7 languages. And then there's probably a little bit of a component regarding the center's expectation when it comes to possible scalability of in terms of utilization. So maybe I'll hand it over to you, Jane, for the language component.
I think, can that be focused on specific geographic areas? I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer this one. I guess it could be focused on specific areas if we're able to kind of extrapolate the findings more broadly. So as long as those geographic areas have that good mix of different types of languages. So sort of following on from Judith's question earlier, so some of the languages that already have good LLMS versus some where that might be a bit of a gap. So because we'd be looking at being able to kind of have some indication for both both ends or both extremes. Yeah, where so yes, I think specific geographic areas would be fine as long as there are the breadth of language types there, and that we could then kind of extend more broadly or more nationally. Does that answer your question? I feel that was a bit waffly. I'm sorry.
Maybe a follow-up question for, apologies if I'm pronouncing this in the wrong way, Tasaduk.
Yeah.
If you had a specific geographic area in mind and for what reason?
No, the point was that if we consider language diversities, now naturally throughout Australia we have different mix as you correctly mentioned. So if we want to conduct something throughout Australia, that will be a large, broader project as compared to if we have a selected area where there may be different mix of communities. That's where this came in, that whether we can focus only on a selected areas, considering that the time scale is maximum 18 months, and then then extrapolate on a national scale. Yeah.
I mean, that might be a way to do it. Alternatively, it might be kind of investigating where is a community of a specific, set of language speakers. And, so you could test out a language with that community versus another geographical area that might have a particular group of, another set of language speakers. So you could come at it either way, I guess, because you'd kind of need to go somewhat deep with each of those languages. So if they weren't geographically located together, I don't think that would matter so much. But having said that, you kind of would also need that, and I guess I'm trying to think if when we were working with SES, so there are certainly some areas where there is a mix of languages, but you also need to kind of factor in, do they have are they living in an area that is prone to flood, prone to fire, so that they're actually responding to messaging that may be somewhat familiar to them, or at least the experience might be somewhat familiar to them. So, it'd be no good perhaps testing with, a speaker of a particular language who lived in a city centre, because, their impact resulting from flood or fire is probably going to be minimal. So it's kind of marrying up those two things.
Yes, and from also a center perspective, we would really like to be able to support broader applications. So consider how, in terms of usability, this can be applied to similar realities, so situations where not to link to that specific isolated, for example, geographic area, but rather than how this can really have an impact more of a national level. Please, if I missed some of your questions, popped it up in the chat again. As I said, I just wanted to reiterate, until the expression of interest deadline, closing date, you still have time and the opportunity to to ask your questions. So any inquiries that come even after these online sessions, when you go through the EOI guidelines, documentations, and even if you want to watch this briefing session again, you can send us an email through at the research@naturalhazards.com.au. I see another question in the chat. Would it be required to include a member of the research team who identifies as First Nations to ensure appropriate cultural understanding and engagement in the project? Brandon, can I pass this to you?
I think this is in the space of certainly not required. This is in the space of, we like to put these projects out to the research community to really tap into what's the best way to solve this problem. So the makeup of your team is completely up to you, whatever you think will provide the best solution to the challenges that were being posed. So certainly I wouldn't say it's required, but it certainly makes sense. And we've heard some of the descriptions in earlier questions, but the makeup of the team is certainly up to the whoever would like to respond to the expression of interest.
Thanks, Brandon. Yes, this goes back to the research capability. So it's not the isolated skills of experiences that you might have, but it's in relation to this specific project to be make sure that those skills and experience can solve the project and deliver the outputs that we're looking at.
Just a quick question. Sorry if this has already been discussed. So regarding the language question, that is it like that we have to consider a very large number of languages and communities, or it can be a sample exploratory research involving a selected number of communities with specific languages?
Yeah, I would think, and I'm just, because I'm sorry, I had to come onto a different laptop. But I would think as long as we have a range, and again, I think it's, yeah, back to Judith's question. So we have some languages that are already well supported, that AI can already handle well. Like, so some of the Chinese languages are probably fall into that category. But then on the other hand, as long as we have some, that are probably not as well developed in terms of the AI ability at this point. So I think the actual number doesn't matter so much as long as there is something of a range and then something in between as well. And again, I would say, yeah, with languages, obviously that are within the Australian context, because you need to be able to evaluate them with community. So I guess it will be, well, the languages that where you'll be able to make those connections to be able to do that part of the work as well. Did that answer your question, Tessa? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering whether part of the outputs might be delivering something like an evaluation pipeline or technical tools that are used in the process of completing this work. Is that something that you'd be interested in, tools that could be reused?
Yes, I think so, certainly. Yeah, because I think I see that some of this work will be not only the research, but what are the processes that will need to be undertaken, to get, it's not going to be just you spit it into an AI tool and there's your output. There's probably going to be for the ESOs some changes in their processing and steps along the way, and yes.
And just a quick follow-up question on the language. So you had mentioned that there were a few where AI can do good, which is true. So do you have already any past research done under your center or relevant organizations regarding this, so that we can, when we are planning, we can develop novelty based on that?
Sorry, I missed just the beginning part of it.
So do you already have any research done on this context as to which language AI has already been explored in the community from disaster warning perspectives? I mean, has there been any research done in this area from the center already, or you are just trying to find out what is there at the moment as part of the project? I mean, what I mean is that whether there is already some research done, like you mentioned that there are 7 languages, 7 or 8, where the AI has been noted to translate well. So I just wondering if there has been a past research on that aspect already.
Oh, no, actually I think what I meant to say was that particularly with New South Wales SES have 7 languages that they're particularly interested in. And again, that's just within the context of New South Wales, where there are significant communities who speak those languages and yeah, are potentially at risk of some of the natural hazards. So not so much that there has been research done within that area. It's just that, yeah, there are kind of known communities. Every state, I guess, would have their own set where, you know, there's a particular geographic area where there's significant communities. Yeah. So I guess that's what I was meaning. Not so much that research has been done in that area already.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that clarifies.
Thank you all for your time today. Hope these sessions helps clarify the points that will help you to put together your submission. Thank you for your interest in the project. We're really excited to see the innovative ideas that you bring forward. So this is really an important opportunity to, I guess, to translate complex science into tools and processes that can genuinely improve community safety. So we're looking forward to receiving your submissions and thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of your day.